Hello and welcome to Tippcast Live. As ever, myself, Shane Stapleton, Danina Guardian Sports Editor, Shane Brophy and Sean Flynn, former analyst for the Tipperary hurlers. Shane Brophy, straight to you. You were there at Páirc Uí Chaoimh to see Tipperary give one of the greatest exhibitions of all time in the first half against Limerick, and then fall on our behinds in the second half as Limerick went from 10 behind to 7 up and eventually win by 5. What's your assessment on it a few days out?
I don't know whether it was Nostradamus that I put up the tweet at halftime about Limerick having a habit of doing this, the tip of coming back behind from big deficits. And look, we knew Limerick were going to come back, but like it was just the manner. How would you say? Like, all credit goes to Limerick for what they did, but like a serious intercounty team like Tipperary shouldn't be overran like they were in the second half. And that's the worrying thing for me. The same with the Under-20s last night, that when the pressure was on, we didn't seem to know how to cope with it or how to wrestle back the initiative or stem the tide or whatever adjective you want to put to it. Like, it was just so disappointing. It was like, as I think Sean alluded to there later on, Tipp did for about 75%, 80% of what Tipp did was perfect. Like, if what you wanted out of them, but just that 20% where the pressure comes on, we just wilted, and that was just the disappointing thing for me. Look, there's no doubt about it. If it was the time to happen, that was it. It was like whether we can address it in 2 weeks in time and hopefully maybe get through to an All-Ireland semi or final, I'm not so sure. Like, but I think what definitely proved is that we can't keep doing the same thing. They've got, at least if we go down swinging again a quarter or semi or a final with maybe trying a few things different, you can accept that. But trying the same thing and expecting it to work, I just don't think it can work going forward. Sean, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, did they do the same thing, Sean? Actually, that's a fair point from Shane Brophy. Like, going from 2 years ago, like Limerick had it won early that day.
Yeah, I definitely think obviously everyone can see they had a plan on the long puck out. And they weren't prepared to give the ball to the corner backs and tell Cathal Barrett and Barry Heffernan and try and get round Peter Casey and Graham Mulcahy, like, because they're two good lads to tackle. Like, they don't allow breaches out. So like, they went well on the long puck out. I thought Jake Morris was very good even on the puck out. I think every puck out that was hitting top of Jake, Tipperary secure possession. Like, so, that's something where people wouldn't have probably said about Jake. They would have said, no, he's a lad that you give the ball out to. But like, he definitely stepped up. Like, for me, I just thought, like, even it was a bit like how Clare played against Waterford. They kind of let Limerick backs have the ball at times in the first half and say, look, try and get through us and try and play it into our full back line, and we'll try and break it down and come back out with it. And then in the second half, whatever you say about Tipp, Limerick ran themselves into the ground. Like, it was just empty the tank mode. Like, they ran everything. Like, one of the first points that Limerick got off the free, remember they won a free in the corner. Like, they won a ball into their defence. Like, Dermot Burns ran the whole way up the field supporting. And actually, when I think it was Cian Lynch or Galan got fouled in the corner, he was still going on the way into the goals. Like, they just decided to run everything. And there was a few moments there where they even lost possession and their midfield just sprinted 30, 40 yards back. To even just not even get a hook or a block, but just put pressure on the delivery. So like, but no, for Tipp, like, they definitely tried something. And I was kind of saying after, like, it's a pity the way the narrative of the game went, that it was one good half and one bad half, because everyone remember the second half. But like, for the first time in a while, I think Tipp were really innovative. They tried something different. They didn't just go, we're Tipperary, let's go out and hurl. They decided that they were picking a couple of areas. They went with the puck out. It was almost like the two centre forwards there with Bubbles and Jason Ford, and Alan Flynn kind of switching in and out as well. So like, that's good. Like, I thought that was going to be great. And like, if we won that game, I think the kind of learnings every club team and underage team in Tipp would have got off that going, like, it's not about just going out and hurling. It's about, you have to practice these things and you have to rep these things, and it comes out in the game. So I was disappointed that way. I just thought it could have been kind of a red letter day where Tipp tried something and it worked and they repped it. It wasn't just going out and saying, we're being Tipp, we're really good hurlers, and let's go out and overpower a team with this fast moving hurling. It was, there was a bit more meta to it. So I'm disappointed in that way, but like Alan Flynn emptied the tank. Like I thought he was excellent. Jake Morris was excellent. I was delighted Mark Keogh came in and did a bit. Paddy Cadell came in and did a small bit. Like they're close, lads. They're close. They're a bit closer to Limerick than we probably thought they were this time last week, I'd say. What do you think?
But like, in a way, like we kind of predicted beforehand that, well, I mean, a lot of us did, that Limerick would probably win by a few, and it'd be a case that their extra energy and athleticism and more repped game plan, as you're talking about there, might see them through. And in the heel of the hunt, they won by 5, and it wasn't really in doubt in the last 5 minutes. So it just happened slightly different than we expected. But in the heel of the hunt, maybe no matter what game plan Tipperary have just at the moment, it's not going to be good enough. Now, the flip side is, there were a lot of things that I liked there. The Dan McCormack matchup on Keane Lynch worked for a long time. Now, ultimately, there's that switch of taking Dan off him probably should have happened 5, maybe 10 minutes beforehand.
I think as soon as Dan got the yellow card, I think that switch had to be made then at that stage.
Like, yeah, and I would have said that overall, that switches, and it's very like Tipperary got a huge amount right. So this isn't really criticising the management too much, but when you can watch it in the cold light of day afterwards, when the emotions have all gone away, like we 3 of us Tipperary men, we all watched it and we were all kind of het up probably watching it. It's hard to think clearly. But when I watched it back the second time, which I'm sure you've also done, I looked at it and I was like, 5 minutes into the second half, Tipper is struggling. The short puck outs are blowing up here. Brendan got turned over for one and ended up with a goal. Paddy Maher hit out maybe a couple of short ones. And like he generally looks up and finds the right option, but like maybe 1 or 2 didn't go right. So Tipp started to explode on their own puck out. And obviously Limerick went to town. Tipp scored 1 point in the second half between half time and the 58th minute, something like that. You're talking about 23 minutes there of Tipperary imploding for all the world. And the young lads who came in, like I thought Paddy Cadell just looks to the manner born anytime he comes out. Like he burst into, was it Kyle Hayes and Keane Lynch at one stage? And, you know, like an older player might fall over in that situation. He just bounced off him, stead going. I thought Brian McGrath got turned over for 1, but I thought he looked fine otherwise. And Mark Keogh came on, didn't do everything perfectly with the ball, but very noticeable that his energy got on the ball. Who knows, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times when he came on and blasted a brilliant goal. So in the heel of the hunt, could some of these changes have been made 10 minutes earlier, 5 minutes earlier, that when things were completely going, you know, knees up for Tipperary, that, you know, like doing it 10 minutes earlier might have made that difference? Or is it a case that once the game was over, those lads were able to come in and Limerick could kind of relax? By the way, people, get your comments in if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook. We can bring them up on screen and talk about them. But could those changes have been made a little bit sooner and just say, look, we are falling apart here, Shane, that we might as well bring those young lads on now?
I think as soon as the Flanagan got the goal, I think the changes had to be made. Like I know that they brought Connors in probably not long after. I think it needed more at that stage. It really needed something different. Like you could sense it actually in the 5 minutes before half time. Like our scoring opportunities started to dry up. I think the last 3 points of the first half were frees we got, and Limerick had chances. They missed a good few, but like you could just sense the thing was starting to click for them at that stage. And look, I suppose it's easy to be wise after the fact, but like it was a hard lesson to learn, like in terms of getting the guys in, and like that did make a difference. Willie Connors came in, was busy. I just thought Cadell when he came in and he sort of played that sweeper role. He picked up a few loose clearances from Limerick. I suppose maybe Limerick started to tire a bit maybe at that stage, but like we started to look a bit decent again. Like we scored 1-4 in the last quarter. We drove 4 or 5 bad wides as well. So like when we just needed to get the ball in our hands, and like that was the thing. I just thought we could have maybe made that. We could have made the change of maybe playing an out-and-out sweeper maybe a lot earlier in the second half, maybe just to slow the thing down and try not to concede that goal. I think, and Sean made the point to me on Sunday evening, and once we started going short puck out, that was Limerick sense blood at that stage, because okay, we lost I think the first 2 or 3 long puck outs in the second half, but I just didn't think we needed to get away from that. I thought maybe that there was a breeze down there on Sunday, and Barry's puck outs were probably dropping about 10 yards shorter in the second half. I just think we needed to maybe get cute in that, okay, we need to get our forwards to pull a a couple of yards further deep and get under those puck outs a bit. I think it wouldn't have taken an awful lot in terms of tactical adjustments, maybe just to give ourselves a small bit of extra protection.
Yeah, just bring in some of the comments there. James Kennedy says, bring in more subs earlier, and Noel Cahill lads. Why did some of the Tipperary players go down with injury? Why didn't, I presume, to break Limerick's flow? Dublin did it with Meath. We even see it like Nicky Quaid often. He seems to have to check his contacts every time Limerick are struggling in a game, but he's grand otherwise. So we know the crack.
Yeah, I just think it's sportsmanship at the end of the day, or it's gamesmanship. But another thing was, I was disappointed. We didn't make enough of the Aaron Gillan incident. A couple of lads showed a bit of anger, but nobody went into Gillan, or nobody made sure that Pádraig O'Dwyer knew that, okay, this is more than just a retaliatory strike. This is bad. And I just thought it had give Pádraig O'Dwyer an out, not to give the red card. Whereas if somebody went into Gillan and looked a bit angry and stuff, and not get yourself and put yourself in jeopardy of getting a red card yourself as third man in, but enough to suggest that to Pádraig O'Dwyer, you can't not just give a red card here. And look, we can't look. We don't want to make too much of the Gillan incident because of the way Tipp played in the second half. But look, his influence by staying on the field was massive. Like, he was that Limerick forward line just clicked once he came onto the field. Like, and like if he wasn't there, I don't think Limerick would have won it. Like, I just thought he was so key to even the way he dragged, I think, Pádraig Maher out of the way for Kyle Hayes' goal. He sort of knew what he had to do to open the avenue up even further for Kyle Hayes. So look, I think his continued presence on the field after that challenge was massive.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, same as Shane. Like, what I'd say is, like, they're learning. Like, that's a huge learning curve again, lads. I know you're looking at and you're saying, geez, they've Noel McGrath and they've Seamus Callan, they've all these lads with All Ireland's won. But like they'll actually learn from that and go, right, when the team is coming at us now, we need to load one side of the field and puck it down and create absolute carnage, or even puck the ball down over the sideline, or something that just gets you in a reset where your defence is set, and if a team wants to come at you, you're set. Whereas, what was happening there in the second half was we were pucking the ball long and we were all pushing up. Like we said we'd go full court press. But the problem was, when the ball broke and the ball was being worked out, we just weren't up quick enough on our man. And then it was open season again. So I think they learn from that, like, as in, like, if you look at it, like, Tipp before, you were trying to play puck outs probably to, one out runners, like we did. The first puck out to Shamey was a puck out to a one out runner, and he miscontrolled it, and then that's how they won the breaking ball off that. So we've gone from, trying to hit one out runners to pucking it down onto an area and creating a bit of carnage and trying to win the break. So, like, you can say that's an excuse, but like they are learning, they're changing what Tipp traditionally did. Like, we traditionally looked at getting that ball out and Bubbles running out and catching it and players like that. So we kind of changed it, and it's just need to add that bit, as he said, the gamesmanship. Like, I think Galway used to do it. I remember talking to someone in the Galway panel, and like, even when they played Limerick in 2018, they said that when the pressure was coming on, throw it down onto a place where three wing forwards are at that side, Johnny Glynn, and even if they lost it, Limerick weren't breaking out. It was just going to be carnage, and it looked awful, and it might have even, condensed their forward line, but they were happy with that it just broke the momentum. But as he said, look, it's easy to say now, and like, if you look at it then as well with the matchups and the subs, like we talked last week about matchups, like how many lads are you going to match up? We had a lot of lads matched up, and you're kind of looking at yourself, well, that goal came from a short poke-up mistake. It's like, it's like sometimes you're playing well and then the opposition get a goal. It's not soccer, like it's not the end of the world, like it's only one little play. So, like, if you looked at it then, I think you're still saying most of the boys are actually 50-50 or doing okay with the ball, all right, with their man. All right, Aaron Gillan came in and there was a noticeable kind of increase in him winning the ball and Limerick coming at us. But like, still at that stage, it was fairly 50-50 between most lads. You could say nobody was getting bet up a stick. I suppose what transpired then is the next 10 minutes then is when, it really came, like, they really came at us, like.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things in hurling is to manage on the sideline in the middle of a game when things are going against you, because it does take on a flow, and it is the biggest cliche going, but a game takes on a life of its own. But like when there are 30 players milling around and there's no offside trap and it's hard to keep shape and in a very kind of prescribed way, it's very hard for management to change it. So, but I am still somewhat critical of, and who am I? I've never been a manager. Somewhat critical of the lack of change a little bit earlier, but I'd be very complimentary of the way they set up from the start of the game. I think the Breen job that Michael Breen did on Kyle Hayes, and I've obviously talked plenty of times about how I think he should play in a different position in the back line, and I still do. But I thought he did a brilliant job of tracking Kyle Hayes. The one time he wasn't beside him, and I don't blame him for not being beside him for every single minute. Kyle Hayes got away and he obviously got that goal. But what a brilliant matchup that was. And we've a couple of comments coming in here. Brendan Condon, I think this is an interloper from Limerick. The breeze, the ref, short puck outs, Galan, I'm nearly feeling sorry for you, he says. Walter Williams adds, surely with all the experience on the field, we shouldn't need to be learning fairly basic stuff at this stage. Fair enough point too. Keep those comments coming in. We're always delighted to hear them, and if we can display them on screen if you comment in on YouTube or on Facebook. But that point, what Tipperary got right, we can talk about that all day long, Shane. But what's going to change if we meet them again? I'm glad Galan didn't get sent off and Flanagan didn't get sent off, because I want to learn the harsh lessons now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you there. I think that there's, I suppose, when you had the backdoor element there, you had a bit of a fallback. Like, I suppose what do we learn? Like, I thought defensively in the first half we were very, very good. Like, we didn't really engage Limerick until maybe around the 65. We didn't sort of rush up when they had possession. We sort of sat back, and maybe around the 65 yard, that's when we engaged, maybe in twos and threes, like, and they were turned over a good few times. Like, I don't think, I can't remember the last time the Limerick midfield was as outplayed. Like, Will O'Donoghue and Darragh O'Donovan weren't really in the match. Like, and I think Darragh or Will got turned over by Noel McGrath for one that ended up in Jason Ford's score. Maybe we at half time we just didn't reinforce the message of what we were doing right. Or we just got sucked up the field by our half back line 5 or 10 yards a bit too far. And then when Limerick came out with the ball, they were able to break, or they were to break past the line. And then maybe at 60, 65 yards, all they had was between between us and their attacking the goal with our full back line. Like, so, like, Brendan was sort of, I don't know where, like, Brendan was sort of sweeping in the first half, but it's hard to know where he was in the second half. I know Dan was still on Cian Lynch, but it was maybe Brendan needed to sit maybe 5 or 6 yards, or 10 yards slightly deeper, like, in turn to cut off those diagonal balls as well. Like, so, Sean said, look, and some of the comments there, look, we shouldn't be still learning, I'd say, in a Munster final, but look, we were caught out badly, I suppose, at half time, and just the same at last night in Under-20. The other team made adjustments at half time, and we weren't able to make an adjustment in game in the second half to counteract what they did. So, look, I wouldn't rule us out. I think there's definitely things we have to learn. I think there's definitely personnel changes maybe for a quarter final and hopefully beyond that. And look, I still think that performance Tipp put in the last day would have beaten, I think, every other county, maybe bar Limerick. And I suppose that we've got to not to maybe throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Like, the Munster final to the Leinster final last weekend was chalk and cheese, like, in terms of intensity, in terms of what was in the game. Like, so, like, I'm sure that's what Liam and the management will be doing in training this week when they get back. Look, we did an awful lot right for 15, 20 minutes. We collapsed really. We got to realize what can we do to counteract that. And look, we can't just say it's a once-off. It was the very, very same of what happened in the Waterford League game 7 weeks beforehand. We came out after half-time. I wouldn't say we were flat, but that the opposition definitely decided, look, we give 5-10 minutes here, we'll get on top, we'll sink Tipp. So what do we got to do at the start of the second halves, maybe the next day, to make sure that the opposition does not get up that head of steam that makes it very, very difficult for us to turn things around.
Guardian writer Thomas Conway has joined us. You were at the ladies camogie, or ladies football and camogie over the weekend, but I'm sure you've seen the Tipperary hurlers as well. What's your read on it?
Yeah, I was. I was following it like everyone else, and I suppose my main observation or takeaway from it, and it probably it reflects what you've all said there. You have to be critical of management, and what was kind of worrying, it was almost a similar trend replicated itself last night with the under-20s. Went in at half time with a considerable advantage, and then kind of just completely decimated in the second half. But I would almost be of the opinion, and again, I'm no managerial expert. It has to be difficult on the sideline for the likes of Sheedy and those with him. But against the top tier opposition, top quality opposition like Limerick, when Tipp went in at half time, everybody knew that Limerick would come out in that second half and, mount a revival. So it's almost when things are going well that, this sounds contradictory, but when things are going well that you need to start thinking about changing things and who are you going to bring in? Because, you kind of just knew that Limerick were going to come at it. Now, not with that force. I don't think anybody anticipated, how strong Limerick would come back at Tipp. But then you look at the bench, and some of those players maybe haven't got the exposure that that would be required for that level in the championship. So I do worry a little bit about the Tipp team. I think we haven't maybe blooded enough new players to draw on in situations like that. But certainly, I think definitely the substitutions should have been made earlier.
Yeah, so another comment in here from Walter Williams. Do you think it's loyalty to the old guard that's preventing younger lads getting more game time, or are they just not good enough to break through? Well, of course, the management have been with some of those older players since 2006, 7, maybe even slightly earlier at different age grades. And I wouldn't be of a mind to say, anyone over 30, let's drop them. Certainly not. But I would be looking at thinking, who can, especially now when you think that you're going to have to play a quarterfinal and then a semi-final in the space of probably 7 or 8 days, and then an All-Ireland final a couple of weeks after that. And after a punishing game against Limerick, that would have taken an awful lot out of some of those players' legs. I would be looking at thinking, who can we bring into the team for the next day, and who can be an impact player off the bench? And look, I'm not saying, I'm not picking out any player in particular, but I'm just thinking of Noel McGrath's accuracy. Imagine him coming on the last 20 minutes. Now, he's still good enough to start. I mean, you could have had him as hurler of the year in 2019. I think he's only 30. But imagine him coming on the last 20 minutes against a tired team, Sean. I mean, his accuracy with the ball, his decision-making. I'm just thinking Kevin McManaman, obviously different type of player, but imagine the damage he could do when it's a close game. A lot of these games are won the last 5-10 minutes. Look at all the games we've had with Galway over the years that are decided by a puck of a ball. Imagine the likes of him or some of those other key men coming on late on.
Yeah, I agree with you. But the other thing I'd say is, if you remember the 2019 Munster final, Jerry Cahill came on in that game, and he was a young under-20 at the time. So Jerry Cahill was obviously playing well in training, and he got his game, and he was playing well for the 20s. So and he came on against Laois as well. So at the end of the day, you're not going to, as you said, you're not going to pick a team just because this lad's 30 and 33 or 32 and this lad's 21. You're going to pick the team that's you think is the best to go out, and whatever you plan to do, they can execute that. But as you say, Noel, if you look at Noel against Galway last year, right? Noel's probably on his last legs after a really tough club campaign. Yet he still scored 3 or 4 points in that first half.
Yeah.
And no other player would do that. He just floated around the place, got the ball put over the bar, and no other player would do that. Now maybe it's time for Noel to get a kind of a role where he's not out in the middle of the field. He doesn't have to worry about having to mark a lad or track cover ground. It's about maybe starting him inside in the corner and letting him go where he wants. Maybe that's the type of role, and as you've seen there in 2019 as well, where he's picking up puck outs in his full back line, or close to his full back line. And maybe that's something like that could have worked on Sunday, because Derek McGrath said it on one of the podcasts too, and maybe if Tipp pulled out everybody and left one inside, maybe that would have stopped the counter attack, and then from a Tipp point of view, when they got possession back, you know, as you said, you can flick balls out to like Noel McGrath and put it over the bar. But like definitely Mark Keogh, I think, has probably put up his hand and said, I'm a target, I can be a target and a poke out. You know, I can take scores, right? I will make a couple of mistakes. But like, if you look at Jake Morris, Jake has probably been Tipp's best forward this year so far. Look how many bad days he had in 2019, in maybe last year, where he wasn't lighting it up like we thought he was going to light it up. But he's learned, like, you know. And like Thomas said, I think those players just need time to learn, Paddy Cadell, and just make those mistakes. And we have to accept, if they're going to make those mistakes in county quarterfinals or All-Ireland quarterfinals and Munster finals and these games, we just have to accept it. I mean, you know, look at the team now. The team is backbone by Dan McCormack. Alan Flynn emptied the tank the other day. I thought he was excellent. Jake, you know, we're not going Canlan and Paddy Maher, and even Ronan, I thought wasn't in the game as much as he could be. And sometimes his use of the ball was, you know, he was getting it going long. And like, I'd love to see Ronan just like doing what Jimmy Burns did in that second half and just getting that ball and going with it, because he's just so powerful. So I just think it's hard. Like, if you could get the mix right, where you know what the older lad is going to give you in terms of your game plan, and then, you know, throw in those young lads, and if they can give you the right balance in your game plan. But like, again, when you think about it, it's very tough on 4 lads 30 plus with 50 minutes gone in that game. And if you think about it, like them were the lads that were chasing after the likes of Shefflin, Eddie Brennan and all these lads 10, 11 years ago for Tipp, like, and they're doing it now. They're being chased now by young lads like Hayes and these lads for Limerick. So, you know, it's tough. It is tough on them. I don't think, then you have to look at the psychological thing. If Shamie Canlan's getting brought off, if Brendan Maher's getting brought off, if Noel McGrath, all these guys are getting brought off, psychologically, is that giving the team a small bit of a boost as well? And like, it was like the puck out the other day, like before the Kyle Hayes goal. I think, like, when you see the full back taking a ball and then putting it back to the goalie and then the goalie going long, that's a kind of, you know, psychologically, if you're on the other team, you're going, these lads are a bit shaken now. They don't know what to do. They're playing it around there. They don't know where to put the ball, you know. So it's about getting the right mix. I think if you get the right mix, and that, you know, Shamie and Noel, maybe if they were coming on, can give it. But then again, as the Clare game, we were all wax lyrical about Shamie Canlan's work rate, you know, against Clare, and we thought it was one of his best performances in terms of just what he did for the team. So it's hard to get a balance. Like, I'd love to see him play Galway now in the qualifiers and just go again, same thing, go again, and as you say, learn it in those last 20 minutes. Either have your subs coming on, 25 minutes, subs coming on, and finish the job. Do you know, start to?
Yeah, Shane, I saw enough in those younger lads to say, throw 1 or 2 in and maybe try bringing the other lads off the bench and see how they go. And even that whole thing that I said about conserving energy, because you've big games to come after that if you win again. So just take up whatever point you like.
Sure, like we only, you were in Crow Park on Saturday night. We have to look what Brian Cody did. You can't tell me that Killian Buckley and Walter Walsh are not in the best first 15 of Kilkenny. But no, Brian Cody has decided, I'm holding ye back. I need you guys to make an impact off the bench, and they're happy with that. And I'm sure if there was any of maybe the old guard, as they put it, maybe were pulled aside and said, no, I'm trying a couple of new faces, or I'm going to freshen it up from the start, but you will be coming on maybe 20-25 minutes to go to make an impact. Those guys will do it. I don't think any of them would sulk or anything like that. They'll do what's best for the team. I was looking back to 2010, the last time as was we found ourselves in this situation. Like, I know we had 5 weeks after the Cork game. We've only 2 this time. But like Liam Sheedy didn't make many changes for that Wexford qualifier. There was only 3. David Young came into the half-back line. And, of course, the 2 that we always remember, Bonner Maher and Garrod Ryan coming into the half-forward line. I don't think, as I said in my piece in the paper, we don't need massive changes. I just think we need 2 or 3, maybe 1 in defence, 1 in midfield, maybe 1 up front. Just a couple of fresh faces that, and you can be sure if a couple of young lads go well after the first 20 minutes, it's going to enthuse everybody around them. I just think it'll just inject a bit of just a bit more positivity. There'll be a bit of energy in the stand among the fans to say, God, this young lad is going well. Like, and look, I say you mentioned Mark Keogh, like Paddy Cadell has done very well since he came in. Like Willie Connors has never let us down. Like when he's come in, I just think we've got to get the balance maybe between starting some of the older guys and holding some back and maybe bring some of them on. I just think, look, whatever happens over the next couple of weeks, and if we do fall short of winning the All Ireland, I'd like to see us fall short trying something different rather than like. That's not to say maybe that the team that started the last day can't win a quarter final or a semi final, but what has worked at the moment win as an All Ireland. I'm not so sure. That's why I'd love to see just tweaks. I wouldn't say wholesale changes, but tweaks just to freshen the thing up a small bit.
Yeah, Thomas, like 5 times in the last 11 years, a team has been beaten by more than 10 points and went on to win the All-Ireland. So Tipp in 2010, Kilkenny 2012, they lost the Leinster final by 10. Clare lost to Cork by 8 points, actually, in 2013. Clare were hammered by Limerick in 2018 by 9 points, so an average of 10, I should say. And then Tipp lost the 2019 Munster final by 12 points, beaten out the gate that day. Do you believe that this Tipp team can go again? It was only 5 points, but like it kind of felt like more, I suppose, is the point there. But do you see a way back for Tipp?
Yeah, I mean, it was only 5 points, but it was an even heavier kind of psychological defeat, I think. It's interesting. I think Shane referenced it in a tweet, like at the start of Liam Sheedy's tenure, or in his second or third year in 2010. I mean, you had that loss to Cork in the opening round of the Munster Championship, and they bounced back. They bounced back from that and won an All Ireland. Do I see Tipp re-emerging this year? I'd have a lot of reservations. I think there's kind of a mental hoodoo has kind of evolved in terms of Limerick now. I think Limerick have that over them. But funny enough, I don't really see I know, there's questions around the fitness of some of the forwards. Can they last the full 70 minutes with age and that? But I mean, Tipp were decimated from kind of the Limerick half back line forward. And you only have to look at that Kyle Hayes run. The power Limerick can bring to this game. From their half back line up with that press and that counter attacking strategy, I think Tipp need to be equipped for that, and at present I don't think they are, and that's why I think the likes of Paddy Cadell, I think Willie could have been brought in earlier. Willie Connors, I rate him seriously highly, and think he could actually do a job individually as a man marker on someone. As well as operating in the kind of forward role that he does. So, I mean, I just find it very hard to see anyone stopping Limerick. Bar Kilkenny, and even at that, I think Kilkenny would really have to catch Limerick on a very off day, which they have done before. But the fact that they've done it before means that maybe it's less likely to happen again. So Tipp are going to have to do a hell of a lot of improving if they're to become viable All-Ireland contenders.
I'd love to see Kilkenny have to play Limerick at some stage. If Tipperary weren't to get there, I think Limerick would do a right number on Kilkenny this year. But look, I think
it's the one team they want.
Yeah, there's revenge on their minds.
Yeah.
Just a quick word about the qualifiers this weekend. Watford against Galway, Cork against Clare. Like Shane, Watford are coming in off the back of scraping past Laois the other day. Galway were terrible against Dublin. I mean, Dublin were very good, but Galway posted the lowest score of any team in the championship this year with 114. Then Cork lost to Limerick, but I really think their trajectory is going that way. And Clare, then, of course, they've won 2 out of their 3 matches this year. Lost to our own Tipperary. The black card obviously had a big impact in that game. But they've won 2 games, both of them at Semple Stadium. So what are your thoughts on these 2 qualifiers?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be going to the Waterford Galway match. I'm covering it for one of the daily papers. But that's a fascinating one because you have both teams coming in not sure of their best form, which is strange. Like Galway have been stewing there for 3 weeks after the Dublin game. Will there be? You'd like to think maybe there'll be a response there, but you couldn't be so sure. Waterford, we expected a response against Laois. I don't want to downplay Laois' performance. They were excellent, but you were probably expecting more from Waterford. Maybe it was another one of those from Waterford where maybe psychologically some of those players can be a little soft in matches they're expected to win, like against Clare, and they were just didn't go at it hard enough. And whereas this weekend against Galway, you'd like to think they'll be fully focused for this one. And I suppose to be a 50-50 game, maybe Galway will be slight favourites. And I suppose maybe that's where Waterford are ultimately dangerous, playing that underdog role. As Sean said, alluded to, if I was a Tipperary person, I think Galway would be a better matchup, because look, we know the matches against Galway generally are a score either way. Like whereas against Waterford will look at that, think of what Tipp the last day and think, okay, we've done it. We've done a number in the league, doing the very same thing Limerick did. We can do that again. I'm sure Cork will feel the same if they come through. So I don't know. I still think I don't know. There was something in the Galway performance that's against Dublin suggests to me that they won't turn this around unless they make big changes. And they're not the most pacey team in defence. And I think Waterford will run at them on Sunday or Saturday. So I fancy Waterford slightly. The other one, I tip in Clare because they're a team I can trust more at the moment. I don't know what to make of Cork yet. I need to see them a second time. In fairness to Clare, they're battle hardened after the 3 games. There were 3 games they could have arguably won, like even including the Tipp match. They're probably, I suppose, the strong start, or maybe the poor start by Wexford maybe was the decisive factor last weekend. And like you probably think Clare are probably going to have David McInerney in from the start the next day. He'll strengthen the defence. Maybe Shane O'Donnell could be ready to come in off the bench. So they'll be slightly stronger. I purely on the basis that I would trust the Clare team more in terms of what I'm going to get than from what I'm going to get from Cork at the moment. But then Cork have got the boost from underage wins over the last few weeks, which probably will transfuse its way into the senior team. So I said they're 2 very, very tight games to call.
Yeah, Sean, jump in there.
I think it's a huge game for Cork hurling, to be honest. Like if you look at their last couple of years, they lost to Kilkenny in a quarter final. They had a right good game against Limerick that year, bet Limerick, and then last year bet Dublin. I thought Dublin were a bit kind of all over the place. They were down the stretch against Tipp, 65 minutes. The game was there. They got bet. And you talk about this Corkness and what is Corkness and all that. But like, I think against Clare now, Clare have sat off teams and let them come at them. And that's not going to suit Cork. Cork wants you to kind of, press up and go at you, and then they can play their kind of running game and, deliver the ball into the full forward line inside the 45. And like Clare are literally, it's park the bus sort of stuff what Clare are doing. You could see it against Wexford. And, Wexford brought everybody out then, and, they were trying to play through the ball through an area where it's congested and it can go either way. And like I think Wexford only scored 5 points inside the Clare 45-yard line. And if you look at the flip side, that's where Cork do most of their scoring, inside the opposition's 45-yard line. So it's either going to be Cork go out and, like we said about Tipperary before, Cork go out and say, we're Cork, this is how we play, we go out and play and see how it goes. Or is it time for Cork now to kind of go, right, we can't just go out and be Cork and just play the way we want to play. We have to adjust things. And like, I'd be very wary, because if you remember, lads, in 2016, Cork played a sweeper and they got absolutely, scalded about doing that. So I'm not saying that Cork need to play a sweeper, but they need to do something different. Traditionally they like to play with their 3 men inside. Maybe it's time to do something different. And that's just interest to me. I think if Cork do something different, I think they'll beat Clare. But I think if they play into Clare's hands and just, maybe like Waterford, I think they could get caught again. But I think it's a massive game for Cork because, as you said, Shane, all the underage wins and everything, it's worthless unless you're going out against the likes of Clare and beating them, and moving on. And I think then if they get up to Croke Park and get against a game against, maybe a Kilkenny again and have a go at them, I think Cork might be able to have a bit more of a longer championship than they've had in the last couple of seasons, because I think I don't know where they're reeling for a year or two after that 2018 All-Ireland semi-final, but they were down the stretch in that game as well, down the stretch against Tipp. They actually need a big win. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah. Thomas, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would tip Clare for that game, and I'll pick up on what was said there, precisely for the reason that you outlined, Sean. In that I can't see Cork deviating from that game plan, from that kind of intricate passing game which they play. And I think we talked about this on an earlier Tippcast. They haven't really changed or adjusted up until now, and they seem kind of wedded to that style, and it can be very effective. There's no doubt, but things have to go. Absolute perfection is the standard that they have to meet in order for things to really go right. And I think Clare will ultimately damage them. Now, having said that, there's plenty of promise in coming years for Cork when you look at that under-20 performance last night, particularly their half-back line and their, they have some players at the back there, and that Ben Cunningham who came on. In terms of the other game, Waterford-Galway, I think Galway have probably had their major mishap this year, and I'm not suggesting. Dublin were very impressive, and we shouldn't take anything away from that win. Waterford haven't entirely convinced me, though. I think Galway have more strength and depth, more assets, and they're more they're physically more powerful. They're a team that maybe could evolve. They've always been slated as the prime challengers to Limerick. Maybe I might adjust, my earlier prediction and said that, if things start to come on stream for Galway, you might give him a shot at Limerick with Joe firing off all cylinders. But for me,
he fired off none the last day.
Yeah, but they tend to do that, don't they? And that's kind of the reason why, why I think it won't happen again this time. They tend to have their major mishap every season, and sometimes it results in them being jumped out of the championship, like they were last year. But yeah, if you're pinning me down to a prediction, Galway in the Galway-Waterford clash and Clare in the other one.
Yeah, I'm very interested with what Liam Cahill is doing with Austin Gleeson. Scores 4 points from wing back from play against Clare when they were very poor the first day out. Obviously missing an awful lot of players, so you have to take that into account. Puts him back up full forward largely from what I saw the last day against Laois. Won a couple of brilliant high balls, got a couple of decent scores. Seemed to play it pretty well, but is trying to settle down, because when they were missing all those players and Jamie Barnes only coming back in off the bench, obviously not everything is working out perfectly for them at the moment, but Galway were dreadful. I mean, Canning had 10 missed chances in the first half. You're looking at like forwards, or a lot of players being swapped around in positions, and is that kind of affecting the team somewhat? I mean, think about it. Adrian Toohey was cornerback in 2017. He was wing forward or in around the midfield area the last day out. Dahi Burke's going out centre back, then he's back in full back. Have they improved since winning the All-Ireland in 2017? Not at all. They even didn't get out of Leinster there in one of the seasons. Contrast that with how Limerick have improved in their few seasons since. It's fairly galling. I still think they can win that game just because Waterford aren't flying at all, but I think they're a very vulnerable team thereafter. When it comes to Cork, I look at their team the last day, and I thought that Ger Millerick did a man-marking job on Cian Lynch any time that they were out of possession, so that Mark Coleman could sit back. I thought Jack O'Connor, who scored three from play on Sean Flynn, which isn't to be sneezed at, thought he was really good. But Patrick Horgan didn't fire, and he's one of Cork's greatest ever players. 4 frees is all he produced, missed the penalty. Robbie O'Flynn barely had a puck in that game, and I think he's absolutely class. He only scored a point. Seamus Harnedy had to go off early in the second half. The puck out absolutely imploded. But still you had lads like Sean O'Donoghue who cleaned Aaron Gallan off in that game. And Tim O'Mahony, a few times they did these flowing moves out from the back. And I know what you said, Sean, that maybe that wouldn't work against the way Clare set up. But I think there's enough quality in there. Like Conor Cahalane, maybe he'll start midfield again, but can he be out of midfield winning ball? Can Harnedy as well? Can Robbie O'Flynn actually run at some of the half back line of Clare there? If I'm going with Cork all the way in this game. I think Cork, they've got an All-Ireland in them. Maybe not this year, because I don't know if they can win 4 games on the bounce. Is it 4 games on the bounce they'd have to win? I don't know if they can. But I think like Cork are eventually going to win an All-Ireland. There's too much class in that team. I think Clare are trying to plug holes. I think a few of their hurlers are a little bit one-sided. So for me, it's Galway barely, but I don't trust them. And I go with Cork with a little degree of confidence. I could have egg in my face, but I'm just trying to lay down a marker there, Sean.
Yeah, I the one thing I'd say about Galway is like, if you walked away in your revolve with Galway there, you'd say, right, we just hit wise. Like, it wasn't that we were torn asunder. Like, we just fell in front of goals. So like, again, you could do the nuclear option and change everything inside out. And now, obviously, I would definitely take Adrian Toohey out of the half-hour line, in that area. But like, in a way, like, you're going to say, right, is Joe going to miss those chances again? Probably not. Like, are we going to be as arrogant and go for goals like we did last time at the start? Probably not. Are we going to leave Conor Whelan out centre forward for a while when he's an absolutely devastating inside forward? Probably not. So, like, I think they've learned a few things. I don't think they need to go for a huge nuclear option and massive changes. But I still think they could challenge Limerick on a day still. I think, Éanna Murphy probably has learned a bit from his semi-final experience last year. I'd say the management probably have learned a bit. And sometimes, yourselves, like Tipp in 2010, like, you can kind of have an opinion of yourself and say, look, we were 3 or 4 points off Limerick last year. We were nearly at it. And then you can kind of sleepwalk into the next year and go, it's about just getting back to that last 20 minutes of a game or last half an hour of a game. And, but you have to do loads of work to get there again. And maybe a small bit of that seeped in, and that's why the shooting was a bit off. Not taken away from Dublin, but, I think Galway will just go, let's go again at it, make a little change. But I don't think as he said, we're going to see huge personnel or tactical change. I think Galway are just going to go out and play like they usually play over the last couple of years, go along with their puck out, go direct with the ball into Conor Whelan and these players. And like, 5 weeks ago we were saying Evan Nyland, Brian Concannon and Conor Whelan was going to terrify any defence. So I still think they can, like.
Yeah. When are they ever going to convert just 15 of 41 chances again?
Yeah,
that's
the way we think,
Yeah. So, Shane, let's jump on to the Munster Under-20 hurling clash last night. Cork ended up winning 3-20 to Tipperary's 2-17. I mean, it's been a tough week for collapses, but, from such a good position, this, I'd say I was very, very unimpressed with it. It was just long ball after aimless long ball, players running down dark alleys, and Cork just sitting back and countering and getting score after score. It was very frustrating to watch.
Oh, yeah. Sure, look, you thought at half time there was, like, Tipp were excellent in the first half. They probably should have been a couple of more points ahead. Like, they were full of movement, full of verve. Like, they were, like, Devin Ryan at centre forward was carrying on his form from the previous week. Max Hacken got a cracking goal. Like, we just seemed to be finding space and getting chances away. Like, it was just a lot like Sunday, where, in fairness, I was talking to a county board official last night, and he said, look, there was no overconfidence at half time. Like, the manager were reinforcing it's only half done, like, and remember Sunday, like, so, like, they were sent out with the very same message, like, and that the time that to really dig in and find a bit more of that first 5 minutes of the second half. But look, it just didn't bring it. Like, and then Cork brought an extra gear, out of 2 gears, and like, as soon as they got their noses in front, like, they really kicked for home. Like, and I suppose tactically, look, they made an adjustment that we didn't readjust to. Like, they sat back about 5 yards deeper. They brought an extra defender back, and it crowded out the space where Devin Ryan was playing. And they more or less said, like, Devin scored, I think, 7 points in the first half, 3 from play. And they more or less said, Devin, if we're going to lose, it's not going to be Devin Ryan who's going to beat us in the second half. Somebody else is going to have to beat us. And we just didn't have another forward that was able to do that. And look, the quality of ball going in was very, very poor. And look, you're still hoping maybe the likes of Cian O'Kelly and some of the bigger, stronger guys could have won a few puck outs. It didn't happen. In fairness to Devin Ryan, there was a couple of times in the second half, Max Hackett as well, where they made themselves available for maybe a 50-yard puck out to give Aaron Brown an out, and they worked a couple of scores with, like, that didn't happen often enough. And like, maybe some of the substitutions you question, like John Campion going off injured before halftime. He was a big loss, but he's that complimentary workhorse there in the middle of the field. There, he gets stuck in and he picked off a couple of points. So, like, that was a loss as well. But like the likes of Conor Hennessy, I would have thought, big physical guy, he could have maybe been brought in when John Campion went off instead of Peter McGarry. Like I thought it was a strange one. Like Paddy Creedon was left on an awful lot in the game. He wasn't effectual as well. Kyle Shelley got a great goal when he came in, but he was only sent in very, very late in the game. So look, take nothing away from Cork. Look, like their Pat Ryan really changed things up at half time. Like, and they brought on their subs. Every one of their subs contributed. I think it was 1-4 off the bench. And Ben Cunningham, look, he doesn't look like a Cork hurler you would associate with a Cork team, but look, he brought something different that they needed. Just a guy that was busy on the ball, got on the ball, hit his 3 points, but brought other players into the game as well. So look, a sobering night. But look, this group of players, even at minor level, while this group won All-Ireland or won a Munster minor 3 years ago, like that was a team that were very, very Jekyll and Hyde. They lost to Limerick, then they beat Cork, then they lost to Waterford, then they beat Clare and only got into the final on score difference. And then their best performance was in the Munster final against Limerick. And then in the All-Ireland semi, were probably just a little bit off the mark against Kilkenny. And look, we saw that again, even against Waterford last week and last night. They mixed the very good with... There was no consistency in what they were doing throughout the game. It was good or it was below average. And I suppose that's the frustrating thing, that when we play well, we're very well, but when our struggles tend to be very, very hard, they tend to be disastrous rather than not being fatal, if you know what I mean. Like you like a period in the match when you're under pressure that somebody would maybe draw a foul in a scoring position to slow the match down. We'll get a freeze, drive it over the bar, slow the match down, and we'll reassess again. But a lot like Sunday, we had nobody to get on the ball, to win a free, to slow the match down, get a couple of scores just to keep the ball ticking over. Just a very, very disappointing evening overall.
Yeah, so like 7 points up towards the latter end of the first half, only ahead by 4 at half time. Cork won the third quarter 2-5 to a point. I think half of Tipp's starting forwards didn't score either. Thomas, what was your read on it?
Yeah, just looking through the stats there. I mean, our full forward line, the likes of Devaney, didn't get a point, didn't get a score between them. Now, you could attribute that to the dominance of the Cork full back line in that second half, but it still tells its own story. Now, I mean, what from watching it on television, what was very evident is, Tipp's failure to actually throw a spanner in the works when they needed to. And one very simple thing they could have done was change around the puck out strategy, because they were lofting balls down on top of the likes of Sam Quirk, who ultimately got man of the match on TG Carr, and the rest of the Cork backline, who swarmed that section of the field. A Tipp were simply unable this is in the second half, particularly in the third quarter, to gain a foothold and get possession. And then, it opened up a lot of space down the Tipp side, the Tipp end of the field, and Cork, Cork exploited that. They made hay and they struck some excellent scores. So you'd have to ask questions of that. I think again, our ability to adapt, Tipp's ability to adapt when things are going wrong, we're a little bit one-dimensional at times. I think sometimes it requires thinking outside the box. I think it was James Skell who was on Off the Ball this morning. He was talking about slowing down a game and in a kind of a cynical way. But it doesn't necessarily have to be cynical. Sometimes all you have to do is, make a few radical adjustments. And it was very clear in that third quarter that Cork had a massive purple patch. And Tipp didn't do anything to negate it. And ultimately, that was their downfall.
Yeah. Sean, anything you want to add to that?
Just for me, it's not giving out about management or anything like that, but I just think underage and maybe Tipp and that's why I think I'd have loved if we won that Munster final on Sunday, because again, it wasn't just going out and hurling and being Tipp. There was detail put into it, and we were taking Limerick because we'd practiced, we'd repped, we'd done something. And watching the game last night, comparison to maybe Limerick playing the night before in the 20, I just looked at Tipp and I would have said, going out hurling, expecting, obviously probably between the two teams, Tipp and Cork, best hurlers. Tipp were the best hurlers. But as regards of how they were playing, how they were using the ball. Right, it worked in the first half. We got a turnover, we got a goal, we were winning the breaks. But when you're not winning the breaks and you are still on possession, or getting possession in your backs and just banging it along, what else you want to do? And it's down to me. For me, it's game management. It's us in Tipperary being open to playing different ways. And again, it's not always about going back to playing a sweeper, but it's just doing something different. And me, I'd like to JD. If you see JD and what he does at First League, a lot of time he's getting the ball out midfield and taking it on. So when you're keeping him inside in the corner and things like that, he's another man who you just kind of let off and let him loose a bit and see, can he pick up ball around the midfield and take ball off the defenders and then bring it onto the line. I don't know, does he like it inside and getting ball inside and having to take on the man like that? So I'd like to see underage just in general, just a bit more detail in our game and how we play. And I'm not questioning probably the best 30 players who are on the Tipp panel. I'm not questioning the management at all. I think it's just as a county in general. I think I think the seniors have learned the lesson and are getting there. And I think it's, maybe until the seniors get over the line and win a big game with that detail, everyone else will follow. That's the way I look at it now. It could be totally wrong. Look, if a goal or two went in last night and Tipp won by a pint, would you be saying that? But I still think our use of the ball as a county has to change. I think we're still married to that let's set the ball and hit it, let's win our own ball and let the good hurlers destroy a team. I think we have to change it a small bit. Look at the other counties who aren't as good and know they have to do something. If we brought that to our game, I think that's what Limerick done.
Yeah, but there was even a bit of naivety in the defending. Think of the goal that came off the sideline cut. The wing back, I'm not going to name names, but the wing back went up to try and catch it instead of just spoiling his man. As a defender, you have to know just spoil your man. The other goal that came from a hand pass and a backdoor cut from the corner forward, there was one man already tracking him, the other man shot in, and then the goal scorer was able to just walk it in and just fire it into the net. It's just so naive, very frustrating to watch. But a shame that there's no backdoor to go again.
There is, yeah. Well, let's look. I suppose we don't want to. I suppose it's an under-20 championship. The guys went out to win, but I suppose we have to look at. Ultimately, it's a development competition, and what we have to see. Ultimately we want to see some of those guys going on to play senior, and I think there is a core of maybe 4, 5, 6 guys there that have good senior futures with the right senior management team, and I think Kevin Maher is one, but probably not as a halfback. I like Johnny Ryan there on the wing too. Midfield, I think Max Hackett is. I think there's every time I see Max Hackett, I just think of Jamie Byrne. He just has that bit of energy about him. Loves taking on his men. Johnny Campion is a different sort of a hurler. He's sort of a hard worker, but he can score as well. He has a good engine on him. I think he's one. I think Devin Ryan definitely is one as well. Keane Kelly was quiet last night, but I think he's the sort of guy that just needs constant work. And I know he sort of had an injury affected spring. So and maybe the severe bout of cramp he got the week before maybe blunted his sharpness last night. So I still think there's 5, 6, 7 guys that could have very, very good senior careers there if they stay developing and maybe get their S&C up to the next level. I suppose that's what scared me from Limerick there the other night, looking at the likes of Colin Coughlin and even Adam English from minor last year. They've kicked on. How much have we kicked on with some of our younger lads? Are our younger lads doing enough on their own gym-wise to get them up to the next level, or just to stay with Limerick? We know Limerick are doing everything right. Underage lads are being monitored all the time, even if they don't maybe end up going on to the next level, they still have that background, a bit of information. So disappointed to lose, but I think overall there's a nice core of guys that have the potential to go on to play senior. Yeah,
we better rush on to a couple of other topics because we've talked heavily on that. The Tipp Miners beat Kerry recently 227-114 against Waterford next Tuesday in Cork. Shane, how do you think that'll go?
Yeah, I was at the game last week. I suppose, they were sluggish for a lot of it. It was 110 10 points to 1-6 a minute before half time. Like, it looked very dicey, but in fairness, James Woodlock got the boys in at half time and settled the thing down and went again. So some nice players in the team, some nice finishers in Conor Martin and Oren Jones, and who else? Darren Minogue from Thurles Oak. So look, in some ways, a bit of adversity for that group in their first year at minor probably is the learning thing they'll get, but they'll have to improve against Waterford. Particularly maybe when you look at Cork and Limerick in that other semi-final, that looks very, very strong.
Yeah. We'll move on now to the Tipp senior camogie team. They had a 323 to 114 win over Offaly the other day, up against Limerick again this weekend. So a hat-trick of goals for Orla O'Dwyer. I think this is the first time she started in a national competition since returning as an AFLW champion from down under. But Thomas, what were your thoughts on the Tipperary camogie team, and then even looking ahead to the Limerick game?
Yeah, it was an obliteration, really. I was a little bit surprised. They'd beaten Offaly fairly comprehensively in the league about a month ago. And I kind of expected Offaly to mount a greater challenge, but it just didn't materialise. Tipp, from the throw-in, just stormed the Offaly defence. And Orla O'Dwyer was absolutely superb. You know, she played for the ladies footballers on Saturday in the searing heat. Down in Tipp Town. Wasn't particularly impressive. You know, Cork ran them all over the place in the second half, and you could almost sense that had kind of generated an extra hunger because she was brilliant on Sunday. And having said that, they all were. I mean, Tipp hit some fantastic points, and they really dominated the centre of the field, courtesy of largely of O'Dwyer. But it was very interesting. They kind of played almost an unorthodox kind of forward line. It seemed to be a 2-2-2 formation. But what that did was it created ample space. And that Tipp forward line, would, in my opinion, are up there alongside the likes of Cork, Galway, Kilkenny. It's just, I think, it's coping with the attacking strengths that those sides bring, particularly at the back, that Tipp need to ensure they're solid. I would predict a win against Limerick. I know Limerick had a poor year last year. They've kind of they've changed things around. They have a new manager there this year. But I would expect Tipp to overcome them and top this group. They have Wexford after that. Yeah,
moving in the right direction, and the first outing since the league semi-final defeat to Kilkenny, very much letting that slip away, Shane.
Yeah, and I suppose that was the impressive thing for me, that there was no hangover from that defeat and the Cork game, the Munster semi-final. Like, as I say, it's a dangerous one. Like, they beat Offaly well in the league, but you're thinking Offaly at home, they were a little stronger, that you think there was a danger there that maybe Tipp could have come in flat. But it was great to see that Tipp were hungry and ruthless out there. Like 320 is some scoring in what, 26, 27 degree heat. Like, I don't care what opposition you're playing. Like, that was good going. Like, so they're back at home against Limerick this Sunday in Nina. So look, you'd have to think after Limerick's surprise defeat to Wexford that it's a game Tipp, and I suppose if the management have got to make sure that Tipp treat Limerick on their merits, take them seriously, don't go in soft-headed, and go and get the job done. And hopefully after this Sunday they'll have 2 wins and probably have booked a place in the quarter-final at that stage.
Yeah, Sean, any thoughts on it? I'm not sure how much you've been able to see of them lately.
Yeah, I watched league final again, but I think for them it's just about getting back to that semi-final and just having a go and just getting that big win. Like, they just need that big win, lads, don't they? They need to beat a Cork. You need to beat a Cork, Galway or a Kilkenny. Like, they just need to do it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. The ladies football team lost 6-14 to 110. A heavy defeat to Cork, Thomas, ahead of the game against Meath on Friday.
Yeah, and it's a showdown on Friday. I mean, the season hinges on this in Portlaoise. Throw-ins at 7:30. But it was really disappointing from a Tipp perspective in Tipp Town on Saturday, because for the first 15 minutes, for the first quarter of this game, I kind of couldn't believe my eyes. When you consider that Tipp are missing Aisling Maloney and Emma Morrissey, 2 of their marquee forwards. And yet the Tipp attack in that opening quarter, they ran at Cork and just cut them open. Cork didn't seem to know what to do. But then in contrast, it was the same pattern at the other end of the field. Cork, just the likes of Emer Scally and Sive O'Leary, yeah, just ripped through Tipp, and Tipp failed. I mean, there was two ways of looking at this. There was a lot of heat. I wondered about the kind of the fitness, the energy levels of the Tipp players, because the Tipp, whereas they were able to counter-attack, the Tipp midfielders and half-back line just couldn't seem to get back, and they allowed Cork. They were chasing Cork back up the field. And when you play that game, the Tipp play, you have to be able to transition back into defence quickly, and ultimately that was why the whole thing unravelled. And to be honest, I wouldn't read too much into the heavy deficit in the end, because when Cork get on top of you, I mean, they're just going to overwhelm you. I know it's demoralising that it was such a heavy defeat, but they were well beaten, and they were well beaten. Leaving the scoring aside, in that second half, Cork just completely dominated them in all sectors. So it was disappointing. I still give Tipp a chance against Meath this weekend, but I think Meath at this stage are favourites. They have a lot more confidence, and it will be a real character test, I think, for Declan Carr's side.
Would you go along with that, Shane?
Yeah, I would. Like, it's going to be difficult, and like you have Meath who have an extra week's rest. Like, you think Tipp had to play last Saturday, a 6-day turnaround. Like, Meath are fresh and hungry, and I suppose they'll have the All-Ireland intermediate defeat of 2019 to prime themselves. So look, it's we always knew once the moment Aisling McCarthy and Emma Morrissey got injured against Dublin, and then you had Aisling Maloney, and then you have Aisling McCarthy, who is only making her way back from injury. Take them out of the team, it was going to be difficult. Look, if they could get a win this weekend to get to a quarter final, but minimum would retain their senior status for next year. But it's going to be difficult. If they can take the positives from the Cork game and hopefully maybe stay in the game as long as they can, they can maybe get Orla Dwyer. Maybe after scoring the 3 goals for the camogie team, maybe she'll have 3 up her sleeve for the ladies this weekend.
Yeah, one final question then, Shane, on the Tipp under-20 footballers. Cork on Thursday evening at 7:30. Around the country, people probably generally expect Cork to beat Tipperary in football, but we've rattled them a few times over the years and beaten them a few times.
Yeah, look, I think any time, I suppose when the final whistle came in Thurles last weekend, and we were thinking who will we play in the final, and you saw Cork White Kerry, like, okay, I mean, because we'll be very strong underdogs. The same fear of Cork wouldn't be there when the Kerry land into town. So look, it's Look, I suppose they've maybe exceeded expectations, like to get to a final. Look, you could say they've only beaten maybe Limerick or Waterford, but look, Waterford, I think, were a step up from Limerick last week. I don't think Tipp hit the pitch of the game than they did against Limerick. So, but they still won, and I think that's the most impressive thing. And I think that's what gives Tipp a chance tomorrow night is like they play for each other. There's great heart, there's great team spirit there. There's a brilliant work ethic there. Paddy Christie and the backroom team have got into them. There's no real stars there, but they play for one another. And I think that could carry Tipp a long way tomorrow night. The pressure won't be on them. The pressure will be on Cork. It's at home. If they could keep the game tight for as long as possible, you never know. Like Sean O'Connor at full forward is their best player. Like he's a very, very good, very accurate. Like when he gets a shot at goal, rarely seems to miss, and like he'll be probably a senior player very, very quickly. If they get they missed Barry Keogh when he went off in the first half the last day with injury. If he's fit and ready to go again, like and maybe contribute maybe something like the 4 points he got against Limerick, I think he could cause the Cork backs an awful lot of trouble. So look, it's I think it's one of those games where Tipp, the longer they stay in it, the more dangerous they'll be. But you think that they have to think after Cork beating Kerry in a classic game last weekend, a really brilliant game of football, that and the way Cork seem to be rising at underage, that they'll arrive into Thurles with a bit of a swagger back. And as we all know with Cork, if they have a swagger in anything, they're very, very dangerous, hard to beat.
Yeah, that was some speech from Keith Ricken last week, the manager of Cork Under-20s after the game.
Unreal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was brilliant. But hopefully the Cork implode against Tipperary all the same, whether he gives a great speech or not. Right, that's it for Tippcast Live, episode 12. My thanks to Shane Brophy, sports editor of the Nenagh Guardian, Thomas Conway and Sean Flynn also. We'll be back again next week, as ever we are. Thanks very much, lads.
Thanks.
Cheers.